The way that the world is set up right now, it usually alarms people when we discuss women's bodies in a way that does not specifically urge you to go out and put yourself on display. I'm not discouraging anybody from doing that right now. I simply want to offer perspective, as I feel like we talk about women's bodies in present day times in two ways. One of two ways. Either we discuss women's bodies with the sentiment of, oh, she's exploiting herself for money, whether that be through twerking on stage as a performer, female rapper, through stripping, through OnlyFans, through all of those things where you're basically profiting off of the fact that people like to see women with little to no clothes on, right? Versus people who, promote those things and basically say that this is an empowered decision, right? And you doing what you want to do with your body is an empowered decision. Now, I'm going to meet in the middle here and say that neither one of these things is necessarily empowering. It's not empowering to cover yourself up completely, and it's not empowering to put yourself on display completely. Because it's literally up to you. It's for you to decide whether or not you are okay with the fact that, misogyny and the over-sexualization of women's bodies will always be something that you can profit from. If you believe that that's something that will not eat at you, unlike some other women, then of course it's an empowering decision for you because you are not as affected by the consumption of women's bodies, specifically Black women's bodies. And I'm going to get into why I say specifically Black women's bodies in a different part of this video. But on the other hand, if you believe that women should cover up, women should subscribe to all of these rules that tell us that our bodies are to be kept private because, men can't control themselves and we should not be the ones tempting men when it comes to anything about ourselves that could be perceived as sexy. It is not a woman's responsibility to control the emotions of a man. And obviously that's been said time and time again, but you guys don't seem to get it, so I'm going to say it again. Whatever way you choose to exist and show up as a woman, and if you are doing so authentically and you do not feel the need to censor yourself in order to subscribe to patriarchal views of how women should display themselves, you are empowered. This whole idea of empowerment has been pushed to us as something where if you're putting yourself on display and you're not willing to figure out for yourself how comfortable you are with sexual attention, that you are empowered and you just need to get comfortable with that sexual attention. No, it's literally for you to decide. That's what empowerment is. Now, as a Black woman, as a young Black woman, my body developed very young. And I won't say that it's abnormal for Black women. I think that we just are naturally people who develop in different ways. And so in America, we are trained to think that we developed young, when in reality, this is the natural pace for a lot of us. However, I didn't really feel comfortable expressing my love for my body until I became, I want to say about I honestly like last year, and I'm still kind of figuring it out. And I'm 19 right now. So when I learned that, my body is not something that has to be hidden, and I don't need to be ashamed of the fact that, I have a fuller chest and a bigger booty and thick thighs and things like that. When I learned that there doesn't necessarily have to be shame attached to that, it made me feel like I was free to exist on my own. Now, I'm not saying this with the sentiment that I am like doing God knows what and, choosing to, like I said, put my body on display. That's not necessarily what I would say, but I'm not going out of my way to hide it. And, anybody who does choose to put their body on display, it's not something that I'm condemning you for, but I'm just saying I would consider myself to be somebody who's pretty in between. But, I wasn't raised with the narrative that, I am free to express myself in whatever way feels natural for me. I was not raised with that. Like, I was always told that I shouldn't show too much. I was always told to change when men came in the house. I was always told that I couldn't wear leggings when white girls with flatter butts could. It was never something that was communicated to me that I actually do not have to force myself into this. I was never taught not to be ashamed of my body. I wasn't necessarily taught to be ashamed of my body, but I was always like kind of confused around how to feel about it because of the fact that, obviously in the Black community, we love big booties. Like, this is something that is not new to us, but the fact that, I was a girl and my community did not want me to be a victim of the hypersexualization of Black women, I think that manifested in the wrong ways, and people often made me feel like the way to avoid that hypersexualization was to be ashamed of what I was naturally given, instead of us working on the fact that men are predatory sometimes. Like, men will make you feel like your body exists for their consumption when it does not. And I had to learn that on my own. Like, nobody really engraved in me as much as, like, the emphasis was never on the fact that it's the world's fault, not mine. Does that make sense? So I'm blessed that I had enough brain power to actually learn that for myself, but I wish that I didn't have to go through so much, so much back and forth and like self-doubt, and I wish I didn't have to deal with so much guilt when it came to the shape of my body and how I naturally am. Now, I'm not saying this to place blame on my mother or anybody else in my community, my grandmother. They are not at fault because they also went through the exact same thing and they're only doing what they were taught. I honestly have not even had a conversation with my mother about this, but I don't know if her perspective has changed or what. I think that she did this in efforts to protect me. I know that she did this in efforts to protect me because, you can't control what happens in the world. You can only control, you only have some control over what happens in your household. And as a mother of a black girl, obviously, if she knew that she could affect the mind of me versus, just letting me roam free ignorantly and not actually understanding how my interactions with the world can affect my safety, then she would be irresponsible in that way. But I do think that it manifested in the wrong way. I think that it ended up creating more guilt than was intended. And, I don't blame her for that. And I'm grateful that I was able to come out of that feeling of being guilty about my natural body type. Now, I said that I would come back to how and why it's related to slavery. And everything is related to slavery, guys. I hate to say it. It really is. Like, this goes back to Black women being treated as breeders during slavery. Black women were, constantly raped. Black women were constantly being told that, they're nothing more than what the slave owners purchased them for, and things of that nature. I don't have to dive into the specifics of it for you to understand what I'm saying. I think we all know that Black women were raped in mass amounts during slavery, and this did not end that long ago. Like, it was probably, I want to say, the 70s when it really started to slow down, but at one point it was normal for Black women to be raped. And honestly, it's not that few of us now. But this idea that our bodies do not exist for our own enjoyment is centuries old. Like, our autonomy has been taken away from us. And so I think nowadays, when it comes to Black women, being free with themselves, it's really like a revolutionary act. Like, it really truly is. Because we did not have this freedom until very recently. Like, women, of course, but Black women specifically have been trained to, I don't want to say be slaves, because we never submitted to that, and we were never people who just accepted the fact that people wanted to own us. But you can only do so much when it's a systemic amount of oppression, when it's a systemic kind of oppression. So this newfound freedom is definitely a revolutionary act. And I appreciate that my sisters feel inclined to really be free with themselves and learn for themselves what they want to do with their bodies. And I hope that we continue to do so. It's just that I hope that we are doing so in a way that actually is free and authentic versus how we are told to display ourselves and being told that this is how to be free. Does that make sense? Yeah, I'm still pretty bad at closing out videos. I'm honestly just going to end it here because I'm going to get dinner with the girls. But yeah, I really feel like I'm not necessarily as vulnerable on here as I would like to be. So I think that this was, pretty vulnerable of me. And hopefully you guys all receive it in this way. And hopefully somebody feels heard and seen by me showing and sharing my message and my story.